On today's episode, we'll have special guest Peter Berce from XM Sirius NHL Network Radio for Trending Now, talking all series in the second round. And we'll also focus on the Knights and the Canucks series with some guests Patrick Johnston and Ken from SinBin.Vegas. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Berce, and the mic is always on. You can find me on Twitter at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on the three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with three hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website. Go to jablamsports.com. See all our podcasts and even game notes for each episode. You'll get links to all the things we mentioned on the show, including guests. For our podcasts, click on podcasts and then hockey on this show specifically right on our website. Time for some Trending Now. Glad to have helping me with Trending Now this week is Peter Berce. You know him from XM Sirius Radio. He's a producer at the NHL Network over there. You can find him on Twitter at PBerce. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks for joining. I think is this show going to be called Peter Square? Just because we're both
Peters? Yeah.
Both Peters.
I don't know.
We both have the same initial, PB. This is just totally weird. I'll be ahead of the class because I have E next to my B. You have O.
Yeah.
So I'm ahead of you in the alphabet. But I'm happy to be on. Glad to be joining your podcast.
Thanks, man. I don't really know what I'm going to call this episode, but maybe I will call it something like PB squared or something like that.
That's right.
We'll see. Right. All right. We're going to talk some playoffs, of course, but what I like to talk about to some people is a little career stuff, because you're doing a little bit more of what I want to do, and you're a hockey producer out there. So how did you get into becoming a producer of like a hockey show?
Oh, I've been in the media industry for almost 20 years, and I've been with SiriusXM for almost 15 of those.
Yeah.
And so I've done various different positions, but I started, just went to school, Humber College, at the radio certificate program, then landed an internship back at what was then called Mojo Radio, AM 640, along with Q107. So I did a few months there, then was hired on to do some producing on that radio station for about almost 2 years. And then, they decided they wanted to go in a different direction. No more talk radio for guys. I don't know if you remember that radio station, Peter. So they wanted to do less of that and more newsy stuff, which is their prerogative. And unfortunately, I was one of the people that they felt that needed to let go and use whatever money I was making to help facilitate another portion of the business. So that's nature of the beast in radio and media and any other type of business. And then hooked up with XM at the time back in 2005. And so it was in September, probably right around this time of the year. And then, then hooked up with them. And I've been kind of there ever since, but in various different positions. So I was nights, overnight, the weekends for about 5 years doing that shift on a show called Ice Cap, which was basically a show that talked about the Knights events in the National Hockey League and kind of recapped the day that was in hockey. And then from there, moved on to doing producing in the morning show, afternoon show, and now up to kind of doing a managerial role, kind of overlooking and overseeing stuff on NHL Network Radio. So almost 15 years and various levels, but I've met a lot of great people along the way. Some that I've been with since the beginning at Sirius XM.
Mm-hmm.
What was XM? Now Sirius XM. That was, I think it's almost 5-6 years ago, even more than that, actually.
Yeah.
And so, it's been a great ride. And this year's been definitely different, Pete, as you can imagine, about trying to figure out what kind of content you want to put on there that makes it listenable, that people enjoy or wanting to hear without any hockey being part of the equation, basically from mid-March to August 1st. So that was a long stretch. And so it was great to have hockey for this month of August, and we'll see how things pan itself out.
We'll see. And if you're looking for a great individual, I know one right here. All right. So let's talk about some playoff action. It's crazy that with everything going on, I don't know, I thought there would be a little bit more unpredictability, but now in the second round, 3-1 are all the series. I posted a poll on my Twitter, and I was expecting which one of the 4 teams has the best chance to come back in this. The lowest was the Canucks, voted 9%, and the top two, Bruins 27.9%, and the Avalanche 49%. So and again, this was finished before the game even started last night. The Avalanche-Dallas series, of course, 3-2 now with that big blowout in the first period that they had. So it's interesting the way they're going.
Yeah, 3-1, that's kind of been indicative of the way the playoffs have been going. We haven't really seen anybody go the distance. Mm-hmm. Toronto and Columbus really are the only ones that went the distance in 5 games out of the best of 5. Nobody's gone 7 since we got back to that format. Colorado staved off elimination yesterday. Will the Flyers do that tonight? And the Canucks, I said on the air today, I believe those series are finished. I think Vancouver, I think Golden Knights are, I don't know, guaranteed, nothing's guaranteed, but I'm really heavily in favor of Vegas kind of finishing off the Canucks tonight. I don't think Markstrom is, seems like he's injured or just not up to stuff in some form. And that's a big piece for Vancouver's, for Vancouver to win. And for Vegas, they're just going on all cylinders right now, Pete. Every line is hard to match up against, and they all do something different, but they all kind of do the same in terms of just stepping on top of you when you think you have the puck in possession. They really want to take that possession away from you. And they have a pretty good goaltending tandem right now, Leonard and Fleury. And Fleury had made some spectacular saves in game number 5. Game number 4. And we'll look to do the same thing here in game number 5 tonight. I think that series is over. Islanders, Flyers, I guess Flyers kind of have a puncher's chance with Carter Hart between the pipes, in my estimation, who has been great and okay at some points, but that's kind of sometimes that sometimes plays itself out. I like the Islanders. They know how to finish off teams. I've seen that at least in the last few rounds. And I think they're going to have the opportunity to finish this one out. I don't think you want to breathe any more life to the Philadelphia Flyers. And sometimes I wonder, is the mindset where teams are, on the brink of elimination, to say, maybe I just want to go home and end this bubble life. And it's going to be difficult to win all of a sudden 3 in a row to win against this team. So it's hard to fathom that any team's going to come back. So I say we wrap it up, and Dallas and Colorado Wednesday night. I don't know, Colorado, had to maybe pause for a second, but when you have a third-string goaltender in between the pipes, could they extend it to 7? Yes. And could anything happen in 7? Yes, for Colorado to come back and win this one, Pete. But with a third-string goaltender, it's just somewhere down the line, something's going to break down, and I don't know if Colorado can hold the position. So I'll take Dallas in that one.
Yeah. You went through a little bit of all the series. I'll nitpick in them. Can anybody, and this was my pick to win the cup, is the Golden Knights. Can anyone actually take out the Golden Knights? Because the rolling of the 4 lines, they're deep. And as well, when you even have a backup goalie with a freaking sword in his back, being able to stop the other goalie on the other side of the ice, how can you stop the Knights? I think they're going to go all the way.
Yeah, I don't see anybody kind of stopping them. I mean, they're probably going to go up against the Dallas Stars. So I think, I don't want to say it's a pushover. But clearly, I think they're the better team than Dallas. And even if Colorado does come back, I think they're better than Colorado just because of the injury issues that Colorado has run into. Vegas, like you said, 4 lines deep. They have great scorers. The line of Carlson, Stone in the middle, and Pacioretty they're unstoppable. They're hard to defend. They're big. They can get the puck off of you. They're fast. They're smart. Stone is one of the smartest players in the league today. And they are a hard bunch to go against. But they can play a myriad of different styles, Pete. If you want to play fast, they'll play fast. If they want to play checking, they'll play checking. If you want to play defense, they'll play. That's the versatility that Vegas has. And they have some of that in Tampa. Do I see them kind of maybe making it in the East? I don't know. We'll see what the Islanders have to say, because I think the Islanders are going to move on. So it's going to be Tampa, Isles, and I think Dallas and Vegas. But I think if you had to rank top 4 in favorites, I think Vegas is number 1.
Yeah, I did not have Dallas at all in my maybe even top 8. I'm astonished how well they're playing. Even with Seguin not really looking 100%, that top line hasn't been that great maybe until this series now. But Denis Gurianov, 8 goals. He's been outstanding for them.
He has, and they've had unsung heroes in their lineup. Radek Faksa being another guy that has done some great scoring for them, because it hasn't been all Radulov and Seguin. I think Seguin's actually been invisible in most of these Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think, but that's what you need in these playoffs. Pete, you need guys that are unheralded, 3rd, 4th line guys to chip in and be difference makers, because usually, for the most part, the 1st and 2nd lines on either team is where you get the offensive punch. And those 2 lines always play against the 2 best defensive lines, right? Or defensive pairings. And they, for the most part, cancel each other out. And what are you going to get from the 3rd and 4th lines to help contribute in some way? And I think that's why we always see these unheralded players. It's like, I didn't think that Radek Faksa can score you all these goals. Or, those are the guys, or Denis Gurianov, those are the guys that make the difference in a long playoff run, because, it's hard for any player to go on this enormous long 6-week great offensive streak. It just doesn't happen. Do they have moments? Yeah, but that's why you need kind of everybody on board to chip in, whether it's, okay, this guy's won us game 2 and this guy won us game 3 and this guy, so it's a collective. That's why it's important that the depth of a team is there and it is not compromised. And sometimes injuries, that's just the case. And that's kind of what I saw with Boston and Tampa, where the depth was a bit compromised for the Boston Bruins. Yeah,
with Boston, I don't know how people, and maybe some of the fans and maybe some others, can say it's all on Tuukka Rask. Because at the end of the day, we're living in extremes right now, and many people don't even think sports should be going on. Heck, in the MLB, we have many superstars who aren't even playing the entire season. I don't hear fans, media of their teams complaining. But again, on the other side, the Bolts haven't had Stamkos the entire playoffs. Victor Hedman was gone for a couple of games. Kucherov was out in the beginning of the last game. So these playoffs are unpredictable. You got to just deal with the punches.
Yeah, injuries are always a factor, especially in the National Hockey League. It's different where, and then in the NBA, one guy can kind of step up and light it up, whether, and even if the big star is out there, there's always somebody else that can make that one difference on a player. In the NHL, you have a guy that's a key injury, like Erik Johnson for Colorado, or a Tuukka Rask, that's your starting goaltender that you thought, okay, we made it to the Stanley Cup final last year, lost to Game 7, that we expect him to continue. And unfortunately, he figured he wanted to leave the bubble to his right. The criticism it was inevitable, after last night, because that's what people do, is go out there and start throwing knives at people and not knowing the exact reasoning, other than we know the family reasons, but do we know exact reasons? So it's hard to push on somebody on Tuukka Rask. But Jaroslav Halak is a backup goaltender, and we don't see him, to ride on a 2-week stretch. He played decent, but not enough against those higher end teams. When he's out for the regular season, and Tuukka's not playing for a few weeks, which we saw this past regular season, there's enough runway for Yaroslav Halak to win you a few games, because you're not playing the best team for a 2-week stretch. You're going to probably play the Detroit Red Wings or the Buffalo Sabres or the Anaheim Ducks, the bottom feeders at certain points over the course of the 2-week stretch. You're going to win those games. Mm-hmm. And so it was a difficult one for Boston to lose to Raskin in those situations. And some would wonder, should he have said it from the start? Not sure it would have made a difference anyway, whether he said it at the start or said it, when he did. Did they have to refocus? Yeah, they did. But that's a veteran group, a team that's been through the different wars during Stanley Cup playoff time, that I didn't think it necessarily affected them. What it did is just expose them a little bit on the back end. Is Chara too slow? Are other, Pasternak, is he fully healthy? And these are all just factors that everybody's got to deal with, like you said, Pete. And unfortunately, the Knives were out last night a little bit for Tuukka Rask. Yeah,
Tuukka, if you're listening to this, if they don't love you over there in Boston, an organization that drafted you, a city that cares about its players, that city might be a great place for you to play in next year if you have any inkling of leaving. All right.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I think he either plays for Boston or he doesn't play anymore. I think he retires, as a Boston Bruin.
Yeah, we'll see. He might have a similar ending.
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, Jacob Markstrom, with Travis Green was asked, is he playing tonight? Yeah. As far as a lineup, Travis Green saying, not discussing the lineup, but says Jacob Markstrom is a Warrior. So, yeah. We'll leave that as it may, and we'll find out at some point later whether he starts or not.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of goalie changes these playoffs. Usually there's none. Usually there's that one team, maybe two, where they go back to back with the goalies. But it's very rare that we're seeing this many goalie changes, and it's because the schedule is tighter. They're in the bubble. They haven't played in many months, and now they're playing. So, can't put it all on one goalie, that's for sure. Team that's put it all on one goalie are the Islanders, and they have looked really well. Trotz has them playing at like 200%. They have like nobody in the top 15 points these playoffs, but they're getting goals from every line, all the lines, from Matt Martin to Beauvillier. But the big addition was, I think, JP Pajot, kind of under the radar addition at the deadline this year, which seems like, was it this year? Or when was that? Was that like ages ago? I can't remember.
In terms of when they acquired?
No, I'm talking about because I can't recall with everything we're going through in the world when the trade deadline was.
Yeah, February 28th. No, 24th, something like that. One of those days late in February. I can look it up for you. But yeah, that was a big acquisition. They had to give up a lot, first-round pick and others to head to Ottawa. And, clearly Ottawa was going in a different direction. And they weren't going to re-sign Pajot. And they then, subsequently, on that day, they signed Pajot to a long-term deal. And right now, that contract and that trade for Lou Lamoriello is coming up aces. Mm-hmm. And he's been a difference maker. He's been a great depth center, which they needed, and complements with Anders Lee. And then those guys have worked well together. And Pajot is just on a roll right now. And how are the Flyers going to stop that? It's hard because they just play a system that is difficult to penetrate, where they have everybody within the dots or where the face-off dots are, and nobody kind of veers out from that area. So the player is just not wasting energy, if you catch what I'm saying, chasing a guy around the edges of the rink, because he's probably not going to score from there. So why are we out there trying to stop him from there? As long as our goalie can stop a shot from a bad angle, or we go out and block, we're probably goal's not going in. Once we open up ourselves in that middle area where the majority of goals are scored, that's when we'll get scored upon. So that's kind of their MO. It doesn't work all the time. If it was worked all the time, they'd be champions over and over again. Mm-hmm. And other teams use that system. Philadelphia Flyers play a similar system, that defensive game that stymies. So I think clearly the importance of getting that first goal is there for the Islanders and the Flyers tonight.
Yep. Again, you can find him on Twitter at Peter Berce. Peter, thank you for stopping by on the show.
Peter, it was a pleasure. Thanks for calling me up. We'll do this again soon.
Now let's talk some Canucks. We have Patrick Johnston on the show. He's the Canucks reporter for the Province Sports and the Vancouver Sun. You can find him on Twitter at Rising Action. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Peter, thanks for having me, man.
All right. So the Canucks have already won, you could say, 2 series. They've been so entertaining, this good young core. Hey, yeah. I'm one of those people that actually wanted them to win the lottery, so they have another piece to add to the core. That would have been exciting.
Yeah. That would have been, I mean, let's put it this way. The Canucks you're right, they have a great young core. They really have done well finding, Elias Pettersson was such a sort of, I think, underrated pick at the time. I know a lot of people I talked to who, pay attention to prospects were a huge fan of the pick. Thought he had huge upside, figured that there were teams that were really too worried about sort of his, stature, I guess is the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. And then Quinn Hughes was such a grand slam. I mean, the Canucks, everybody was like, wow, like what a stroke of good luck that he fell to them. So 2 incredible players to build around. I think people certainly in Vancouver know the Canucks are going to have some challenges going into next season and then the season after once Pettersson and Hughes need new contracts, because let's be honest, there are some contracts on this team that are pretty bloated. Mm-hmm. They're paying a lot for skills that aren't that actually important, overpaying some depth players, and it's going to make things difficult really optimizing this lineup. So, yeah, if they've been able to add a guy like Alexis Lafreniere for very cheap, I mean, that would have just been an absolute home run. So, yes, there was absolutely the thought that, as much fun as it is actually to have a little playoff run here, yeah. Maybe that's so in the past. I think that's such a forgotten point. I mean, maybe we'll talk about it a bit again once the draft comes around, because of course Canucks don't have a first round pick now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, in the end, I think people watch sports because they want to see things happen right now. Yeah. They aren't necessarily. I mean, they should be, but they aren't necessarily focused on what's happening next season and the season after.
For sure, and boy, are they getting an entertaining one. This has been a delight. Of course, the first few rounds, and even versus Vegas, 1 or 2 of the games haven't been the greatest, but they've been with them for 2 of them fully. Like, they totally beat them in that second game. The last game, it was close. Either team could have won that one. Wow, like Vegas, in my opinion, they were my pick to possibly win the cup, and they're competing with them almost every single game and could have possibly been much closer series so far. It's going to be tough right now, down 3-1.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no matter what happens, obviously, by the time this podcast comes out, it might be a different story. But, no matter what happens, you're totally right. There's a really good measuring stick here. Vegas, absolutely. Great pick by you. We see them a lot, obviously, here in Vancouver. Just such a strong team, really aggressive, really smart group of players. Everything you kind of want to do in building a team, the kind of talents that you're looking for. And the Canucks have, as I said, they have elements of that. They've got some really strong young players. I mean, Bo Horvat is playing probably the best hockey of his life. And he's a great story in terms of understanding how really good players can become great players. And he's a guy that was drafted, in 9th overall in 2013. Maybe had some questions about his skating ability, but one of those guys that I think even the scouts at the time were saying to the Canucks management was Mike Gillis was the GM then, and Eric Crawford was running the draft. Crawford now works for the Canadians, but basically saying, listen, this is a player who can improve his skating. There's a lot in what he's already doing that he can build off of. And that's, that's kind of the new wave of scouting, trying to understand not just who this player is now, but really trying to project using actual kind of information that you have in front of you, actual like paying attention to what they're doing as opposed to writing down, oh, he's a good player. Horvat is such a great example of a player who's made himself more than I think people might have thought he could be. He's one of the best skaters on the team now. And, he's got 9 goals, full value for that. those are the kind of wins you need to make. And so the Canucks really do, at least right now as they're constructed, and they have some roster decisions to make. Tyler Toffoli obviously is a free agent and a player that they would like to retain. We'll see how that works out given the cap constraints they have. But yeah, they've got two top end lines that really match, whatever it is that Vegas has to offer. There was a really interesting point made by Peter Berce after Game 4. The Vegas coach basically pointing out his team had more depth. And I think everyone who has a brain recognizes that his team is a little more deep. And what he didn't say was a really interesting side point, because if you go look at the way he deploys his forwards, basically Vegas in general, whether he's been the coach or Gerard Gallant had the coach, their top three lines especially, they just roll them. And those guys don't have to be leaned on. And, you don't have to go to 23 minutes with your forwards. You're not wearing your guy out, and especially in a series where you're playing a couple, already have a back-to-back. If somehow the Canucks are able to extend it to 7 games, there'll be another set of back-to-backs this coming weekend. That's really draining. And that was such a good point I thought he made about Game 4, in the sense that, he was able to really kind of let his guys manage themselves over the course of 2 games, as opposed to focusing on one game and then one game, which is kind of how the Canucks are at, because realistically their top 2 lines drive the bus. They would like to get more scoring from the bottom 2 lines, but really right now it's not that way, unfortunately, which is too bad, because they have an interesting kind of third scoring line. They don't play them very much, but the Adam Gaudette has been centering at times, Antoine Roussel, and I'm now drawing a blank, of course, who he's been playing with on right. Well, Brock Besser, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And they haven't played a ton, but it's a line that you look at and you're like, oh, that's interesting. So it is an interesting thing. There is a team that they want to become, and it's definitely, I think, the Vegas Golden Knights. And the other thing I haven't really mentioned, we've talked a lot about before, is the back end. I mean, Vegas is back end. It's so funny. I saw somebody tweet out, or somebody at post game, I can't remember who it was from Vegas, said, Shea Theodore should start getting some Norris consideration. I'm like, I put my hand up. I'm like, guys, I already voted for him.
I think it was SinBin. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just said, the guy moved. He's such a fluid skater. I think he has 11, 12. I can't remember. He's got 12, 13 points now in the playoffs. He really is the modern age defenseman, in that he shuts you down by never letting you have the puck. And even when you have the pucks, great reads, really good hands, takes the puck, and a great skater. He's just a fun player to watch. That's the other fun thing about Vegas, is watching how much their defensemen get up in the rush. It's really almost a sort of a total hockey, like what position am I in? Doesn't matter. I've got to go do my job right now. And the Canucks don't have that kind of dynamic. Obviously, they've got Quinn Hughes, which is great. And Tyler Myers has an element of that offensively. But overall, this is a defense core that definitely is going to need some improving if they really want to become who Vegas is.
Yeah, so what you're saying is Edmonton and Toronto are doing it totally wrong. Top heavy, not the way to go. You guys suck, and that's why. Look at Vegas. So that's going to be the new trend, right? When Vegas wins, is like everybody's got to do this now, where you play all 4 lines, and you're rolling all 4 lines, and you don't overplay your top guys. And when they're on the ice, you do your thing, but otherwise sit on the bench, relax, and just get ready for your next shift when that is.
It's such an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? Because what if Vegas had Connor McDavid? What would you? I mean, you're totally right, because it's sort of like everybody. It is a copycat league, and I'm not sure that Vegas. I mean, it's never one way, right? Vegas is doing it right. They've got some really great players. They don't really have a true superstar, but they've got some really made some. Obviously, we know made some really smart decisions, took advantage of some really terrible managing in that expansion draft by getting, for instance, Marchessault and Riley Smith off Dale Talon in Florida, who chose to protect defensemen that aren't even playing for his team anymore. Alex Tuch is a bit of an underrated story. I mean, Tuch's fast. I mean, he's such an X factor player in that standpoint. Obviously, has pretty good hands. He is I think exactly perfectly cast on that team. Minnesota didn't seem to know what to do with him, which is weird because Minnesota has no young players. He seems to be the kind of guy that you would want to have. They've built their team with what was available. They figured out a system that plays really well for them. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, are you telling me you wouldn't want to have Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews or John Tavares or, the list goes on, Elias Pettersson, you want to have that elite first line player. But I think it really is, like you said, you don't need it, but you don't want to go too top heavy. And I think you need to understand the kind of totality of your lineup and Certainly, I think all the teams that are kind of sitting there still are an example of that. You look at Tampa, how deep they are. You look at, Philly is maybe a bit of a different story in that they have an incredible goaltender, and that's part of it. They're a good team, and they've got, Claude Giroux is the great untalked about superstar of this league, I think. But you look at Colorado, the sort of the depth. There's another team that has an elite first line center, but you look at the depth they built around him, the defense core they have, maybe some questions in goal. But yeah, at the end of the day, you want to have your team be solid top to bottom, and if you can get an elite guy on top of that, I think you're going to be gravy for a long time.
Yeah, you've touched base on all the guys I wanted to talk about a little bit. I thought Horvat, I'm just surprised with him having highlight reel goals. I did not expect this. He's turned into, maybe, I don't want to go reach too far and say he's a Messier type, but the way he's leading the team, way he's built a little bit overall physically, and being now able to score these highlight reel goals, which are maybe prettier than some of the stuff that Pettersson's done.
Those goals obviously scored mostly in the St. Louis series. Maybe a great comparator there is Ryan O'Reilly and the influence that guy was having. And, the Blues obviously off the ice, and maybe a different story, of course, admitting that they had, I think 5. We knew it if you added it up, but I think they had 5 skaters, it sounds like, who were out with COVID for one point or another. Now, doesn't sound like they had lasting effects, but the fact is they were on the shelf. They had to do their quarantine, which meant they were out off ice for a couple of weeks. I think we saw how much, for instance, Vince Dunn, who someone it seems like circumstantial evidence suggests was at least out on suspicion of COVID, he really struggled. But you look at, to get back to the point, Ryan O'Reilly, such an incredible two-way force, super skilled, strong, really sharp defensively. I think Horvat still has to take a step or two to become the defensive player that O'Reilly is. Yeah. But certainly you're right. It's just some real highlight reel goals, really outstanding stuff. And he's just become an exciting player, brilliant leader. He obviously did some really important stuff, supporting Ryan Reeves last week, and in making the sort of 2-day shutdown of the league happen, the player-driven shutdown. He was a big voice in that. And not just a guy saying, well, this is what we have to do, but saying, you're right. As a group, the Canucks went to Reeves and said, listen, let's have a discussion. We want to hear what you think we should do. They didn't come barging in, which is such a great statement of the leader. He has an open ear. He wants to hear more. He wants to empower people and say, what should we do? Just top to bottom, a really fascinating person, more and more.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll have to have you back on the show to talk some of those beautiful young kids that the Canucks have. Yeah. All right. But good luck in the rest of the series. We'll see how it goes. You know what? I can still see Canucks winning a game or two. So they might take them, it might last a little bit longer than people expect.
We'll see, Pete. Thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, you can find him on Twitter @RisingAction. Patrick, thank you for coming on the show.
Take care.
Now it's time to talk some Golden Knights, and we have on the show Ken Boehlke. He's a writer covering the Knights and the man behind the account, which you can follow at SinBin.Vegas on Twitter. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Cool. So the Golden Knights are playing even better than they have been the last few years, especially their magical run during their inaugural season on their way to the Cup Finals. But you know what? It's not so magical now. Am I right? They have the deepest, the most well-rounded team in the NHL, plus that hard-working, chip-on-the-shoulder team that they had at that first year.
They're pretty darn good. I'm not sure they're the best team. I'm not sure they're the deepest team, but they're definitely very, very good. That Tampa team's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I actually picked Vegas to go all the way before everything started. And I'm kicking myself because I didn't pick their players, because for some reason in my group, other than the other groups that were drafting in my fantasy pool for the playoffs, 2 guys in my group were taking them early. I was like, oh, well, this sucks. So now I'm stuck with hopefully Colorado can pull it through. But I really think Vegas can go all the way. Just in terms of the team, and again, maybe I'm reaching too far about Canucks and making sure, they get past them. But what would it take in your mind that are flaws in their game that people might need to exploit?
I think the biggest thing they need to do is somebody needs to put them under a little bit of pressure. So far, they started in the bubble, and those round robin games didn't really have much of an atmosphere, and they were playing, I think the schedule ended up being real good for them. Dallas really took a while to really get going. Like, they were midway through a Calgary series before they really figured it out. St. Louis, I'm still not even sure if they ever got off the plane. Like, they were a disaster the entire time in the bubble. And the game against Colorado was a good game, goes to overtime, Vegas wins in that. And then since then, they play the 23rd best team in the NHL in Chicago, and then they play the 15th best team in the NHL in Vancouver. We haven't really seen this team pushed. We haven't seen this team under any pressure. And they're like any hockey team. They're going to make their mistakes from time to time. But the question's going to be, what's going to happen when they get pushed, when the goalie thing pops up as being something more than just, they're both good and their team is better. What's going to happen at that point? And I think once we get there, it's going to be interesting. I think they can overcome it. I think they can absolutely be the team that wins the entire thing. I don't think we're at the point yet that saying 10-2 or whatever the record you want to use in the playoffs is saying like they're the best team. I'm not quite there yet because the competition just hasn't been any good.
And I don't know if the competition will be up to par, especially in this bubble with everything changing and fluctuating. And maybe Tampa has some injuries too. So the further they go, maybe they might have some more. Whereas, I don't know, Vegas has some good depth.
Well, but even then, I mean, whether it's Colorado or Dallas, even with the injuries, they're significantly better than Chicago and pretty well better than Vancouver. If Tampa gets there, they can lose like 4 guys. They're better than both of those teams. So I agree with you that the path looks really good, but the tests are coming. Like nobody rolls through the entire 16 wins in the playoffs.
We'll see. We'll have to see. Another person that's playing extremely well, and I got to see him when I was in Vegas, and I loved him since he was with the Ducks, and that's Shea Theodore. I think you said or tweeted about maybe he should be in contention for the Norris.
I don't know if he was there this year, but I think moving forward, I think he might be in contention for Conn Smythe, to be honest. Like, if they keep going and the points are there, like his points are right there with Mark Stone. And when a defenseman outscores your best forward, like he's got to be considered for Conn Smythe, and the goalies have been switching. So he's got a legitimate shot there. But yeah, moving forward, I think you're going to see in the DeBoer system, he's really, really starting to come along defensively. And the way they play that up-tempo style, that really high-pressure style in the offensive zone and through the neutral zone, he's going to be able to drive offense. And then he's the key on the power play. So I think a 65, 70, maybe even 80-point season's not out of the case if we play 82 next year, which I don't think they're gonna. Yeah,
they might not. But Theodore has really flourished in these playoffs, that's for sure. Probably the best defenseman in these playoffs. Pacioretty, he looks like he really hasn't missed a step. He might have been a little sluggish when he was deemed unfit to play and he came out the first 2 games, but since then he's been flying. He has 5 goals in the last 5 games.
Yeah, he's been solid. I mean, I think that there's something still a little bit wrong with him. I don't really see him playing quite the same way off the puck as we have before. He has this like almost pit bullish attitude that I think he kind of really became known for in Montreal. It came over a little bit in Vegas, and we really didn't see it a lot the first year. This year, when he was on, you knew where he was at all times. I don't think I've quite seen that so far in the bubble, but it's also, he seemed to have something obviously wrong with him. And as they get going, his offense is coming along. And when they have the puck there, he's been fantastic. So I think you're going to start to see even more out of him, which is a scary thought for the rest of the league because he's been really good so far. Imagine what he's going to be when he finally is completely back on his game.
Oh, yeah. He's been flying. And if it's a scary thought if he's going to play even better than what he's done so far. You know who's interesting to me is the solid addition that nobody's talking about, and a Stanley Cup winner in Alec Martinez. He's been a really steady force on the back end.
Yeah, he's definitely helping Shea Theodore too. I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I would give him credit for is Theodore was having a good season, but he wasn't the key guy defensively. They didn't lean on him every single time in a big defensive situation. Now they can, and they do. And as they go forward, it wouldn't surprise me to see them on, that top line for Colorado or the Ben Sagan line for Dallas. I think you're going to see a lot of Martinez and Theodore. And a big reason for that is Martinez's calming presence back there. He just doesn't mess up. Like, he just very, very rarely makes a mistake. And you can feel comfortable when you have a dominant offensive weapon, a great skater, and then a guy that doesn't make mistakes as a pair back there. Like, that gives you a lot of flexibility, and it allows DeBoer to kind of pick and choose his spots of where to use his other pairs. And they've done really well with it to this point.
Yep. Now that the small controversy is over, how often will we see the 3-time Stanley Cup champion Marc-Andre Fleury between the pipes going forward?
It's over for now. We'll see. I mean, you have to remember when it happened. Like, they went 4-1 in the first series and 3-0 prior to that. So they were 7-1 when that picture got tweeted out of the knife or sword going through his back. So since then they've lost once, and it was Leonard's loss. So I do think if they get in a series where Dallas were to push them, Colorado were to push them, you get in a situation where they were to lose back-to-back games, that thing's coming back and coming back hard. So I don't know that it's completely dead. That being said, to answer your question, I think it's Leonard's goal. Obviously, back-to-backs are still in play. There's a possibility if they were to blow it against Vancouver, or maybe they'll be in the Western Conference Final. Back-to-backs, they seem to want to go with both guys. But aside from a back-to-back, I think it's going to take back-to-back losses in regular games for Fleury to get his net back. And the way they're playing, I don't know they're going to lose 2 in a row.
Yeah, so they won't lose 2 in a row if they get to the finals against Tampa. Again, you can find him on Twitter at SinBin.Vegas. Ken, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I want to thank all our guests today. It was interesting to see all the different roles Peter has done on his path to being a hockey radio show producer. And it was also great to have Patrick and Ken on the show to talk about the Vegas and Vancouver series. The Canucks are really pushing VGK here to their limits, so it's really an entertaining one, that's for sure. Next week, we'll predict a 3rd round series in Trending Now, as they'll just be beginning. So stay tuned for that next Wednesday. Go to JablamSports.com to see all our podcasts and even game notes for every episode. You'll get links to all the things and the guests we mentioned on this show. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends. If you want to contact us, you can follow me on Twitter at Russian98 or the entire team at Jablam Sports. You can also use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. You can also go to our contact page on our website, JablamSports.com/contact. Also, if you like wrestling, check out our new wrestling podcast presented to you by our team at Jablam Sports, Pro Wrestling Explode. It's where Pepperoni, Miranda, and I get into AEW and WWE. We recap, analyze recent matches, storylines, pay-per-views, and what's in wrestling news. Thank you, everyone. This week, our shout-out is to Elio Brusa. He's a terrific friend and work colleague for me. I miss going to movies with him, but when I do go into work, I love working with him, and it doesn't feel like actual work. It's fun hanging around with him. He makes everyone around him lighten up. He's such a great guy. Thanks, Elio. And to every one of our listeners, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.